Hi, everyone. Welcome back from the break. I hope everybody got some good snacks or had a chance to look outside if it's sunny out there for you. I'm really excited about this session. April and I, when we were planning, this was one of the first sessions that we chose. And so today have the honor of introducing you to Sarah Weiss. She is the CEO of award-winning market research agency Bixa and the best-selling author of InstaBrain. For 15 years, Sarah has been a guide to hundreds of leading brands, including Google, IBM, and PBS. Sarah helps brands ask the right questions to achieve a laser focus on their customers and build experiences that are downright addictive. She's appeared in Business Insider, NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, Yahoo Finance, and BBC, and is an instructor of 6 LinkedIn learning courses in marketing, generational design, and storytelling. Recognized as one of the industry's jaw-dropping marketing speakers, Sarah is a mainstay on global marketing influencer lists and keynote stages. Wherever she goes, Sarah's infectious enthusiasm and magnetic speaking style inspire leaders and educators to grow their businesses, transform their communities, and leave a legacy. So please give a nice warm welcome to Sarah, and I will turn it over to you.
Hello, so excited to be here today. I'm just gonna start sharing my screen and hope the tech works. Is it working, Christy?
Yep,
I
it's
hope so.
perfect. Yes.
Well, I'm so excited to be here today. It's so great to be here with you all. To kick this off, I wanted to start with a throwback. Now, this is a screenshot from almost 16 years ago when YouTube first launched as, get this, a video dating website. And this is what it looked like. Now, I bring this up because so much of the time we think we know who we're targeting. We're honed in on our organization and what it has to offer. But sometimes there's a new audience out there that we don't know about that will forever change how we do things. And if we don't get the targeting right, we might miss our opportunity to impact millions or even billions of people. And in a lot of organizations today, we're seeing some giant pivots happening. And it's not just because of COVID, but because of Generation Z, this generation of youth that's about 13 to 25 years old today. And it's because this generation is doing things so differently. They're thinking, they're acting, they're communicating, they're engaging, they're transacting so differently than generations of people have in the past. Hello, I'm Sarah Weiss. Thank you for having me here today. I was invited today because I've got a lot of experience in researching global youth, and I've done dozens of projects with Google, IBM, Citibank, nonprofits, a slew of other organizations to hone in on just how Gen Z ticks. And then a couple of years ago, I also published a book called InstaBrain, got it right here, on really how to reach and engage Generation Z from a marketing standpoint. When it comes down to it, what I found is that companies and organizations, they struggle to hone in on who their target audience is, how to reach them, where to invest marketing dollars and programming budgets to make the most impact. And that's really why I founded my market research company, Bixa, to conduct primary research to help organizations gain clarity on who they're researching or who they're reaching, and also map out the most effective ways to use their limited funds. So this way they have a roadmap to reach the right audiences and then build something of value for them. So now I'll mention it at the end of this talk as well, but if you'd like to get the first chapter of InstaBrain deliver right to your inbox right away so you can start digging in, I'd love to send that to you. Just pull out your phone and text the word HI, HI to 66866. So I'll say that at the end too, but there you go in case you want to do it right now. So over the past few years, a lot of our research has honed in on the mental models of Gen Z. So not just what they do, but the intent behind it. And so for the rest of this talk, I'm going to share with you some of the major trends we found along the way, trends that will hopefully illustrate for you what you could do differently to attract, to engage, to retain this new wave of customers. So today's youth have they've really never known a world without search, social, and smartphones, and they're influencing just about every other generation to do things differently. And organizations that don't pay attention to the way the market is shifting, think Blockbuster and Borders and Babies R Us, they're going to wind up as relics, as pithy antics we tell at virtual conferences. There's really no better time than now to learn about Gen Z and really create a new type of an engagement strategy. I think what's most compelling about this generation is really their sheer size. Gen Z is young, but they make up the largest living generation right now. Over half of the world's population is under 25 today. And whew, that's a lot of selfies. And when we're talking about the US alone, Gen Z makes up 40% of American consumers. They impact 655 billion a year in spending, and that's between both direct purchases and also purchases that they've influenced their families to buy. So billion with a B. And in fact, in the US, just over half of children, 53%, now own a smartphone by the age of 11. 1 in 5 has a smartphone by age 8. 98% of teens in the world own a smartphone, and 85% find new products on social media. So it's really a game changer here. So here are a couple of other stats that I thought might be of interest to you too. Young people from families making 35K annually or less, they spend much more time on screens every day. So nearly 2 hours per day more than teens of families making over 100K a year. And this gap, it's not new. It's been there for years. It's persistent. And the explanation really is that screens are an affordable alternative to after school programs. Screens are a huge part of schoolwork today, too. Over almost 60% of teens report that they do homework on a computer every day. And you've got to think that's probably the percentage that actually does homework every day, period. If the stat is that over 60% report that they do homework on a computer every day. So using screens so much for schoolwork, it can certainly present a problem given the temptation to just, peek at social media for a minute or two, or just play that computer game. There's certainly that issue, but there's also an equity issue. Although lower income teens, they spend more time consuming media on screens, they're much less likely to own a laptop. And so that means their homework is done mostly on their phones, on their smartphones. So it's a big difference for sure. So here's where I think there's certainly opportunities for libraries to fit in with screen-based learning programs, informal learning programs to get kids into the library to do their homework on a library computer instead of their phone. So now is the time really for libraries to build trust with young people, to shift strategies, to reach and engage this younger generation by offering something of true value to them. What's also striking about this generation is that it's really just how different they are from millennials that are just a few years older from them, even the young millennials. Generational changes make for vastly different behavioral patterns. And so while millennials and Gen Z, they're both digital natives, they don't consume the same types of content. And this is for a few key reasons. So first, there was a big shift from what we called helicopter parenting. You've probably heard that term with millennials, to tech parenting for Gen Z. So helicopter parents with millennials really kind of kept their kids tethered to them, and they did a lot of stuff for their children. But with Gen Z, there was this huge shift in parenting styles to where the parents didn't actually do stuff for their kids, but they taught their Gen Z children how to do things for themselves using technology. Now, this was good and bad because, yes, they're a much more independent generation, but at the same time, their parents scared them like crazy, just completely terrified them about all the risks involved in using the internet. So everything from online predators to identity theft and everything in between. This generation is more independent for sure, but they're much more risk averse. The other thing that really impacted this generation to behave differently is that they have experienced hardship. They've witnessed hardship. They were born after 9/11. They have never known a time without war. They were raised in a recession. They saw their parents lose jobs. They're hungry for work. Nearly two-thirds of Gen Zers say that they want to start their own businesses versus work for someone else. They highly respect, YouTubers or any sort of influencers, Instagrammers who are paid and sponsored and making money online. They're far more money driven than millennials. They're very side gig savvy. A lot of them have these side jobs that they're doing even while they're in high school. A lot of them have side businesses where they are making money online. And what's interesting too is the job choices that they're choosing as a result. We're seeing a surge in STEM majors at universities to ensure that they're going to have a degree where they could get into a high paying field. And it's very different. It's just very different from millennials who often took jobs they loved for lower salaries because they were passionate about it versus this generation Z, who's not willing to make that sacrifice. They're just a little bit more risk averse. They're savers, they're long-term planners. The other thing that's very different between millennials and Gen Z is the attention span. And millennials have, a pretty short attention span. We talk about millennials as having a 12-second attention span. But Gen Z, they only have an 8-second attention span. And this is because they're just juggling more stuff at one time. So millennials can juggle 3 screens at a time. So they could be, say, playing a video game and texting one group of friends and watching TV. Like they could be doing 3 things at once with 3 different screens. Now, Gen Z can do that with 5 different screens at once. So they could be like playing that video game. They could be texting one group of friends. They could be having a conversation with another group of friends in a headset. They can be watching TV and talking to their mom. Like they could be doing all of that stuff all at the same time and keep it all straight in their short-term memory. And they do that by really switching. There's no such thing as multitasking. It's more like multi-flexing. So they're flexing their attention between one screen and another at such a rapid rate that it just, for anyone older than 25, it just makes your head spin. I mean, it's just unbelievable. But they do have this really cool, what I call superpower. Sorry, kind of crazy with my slides there for a minute. They got this superpower where if they juggle all this stuff. They're learning about. They don't have a very high attention span, but once they get interested in something, they can hyper focus on it. And we will talk about that as one of the trends later on. So we talk about the shrinking attention span, but they also have the ability to hyper focus in a big way. All right. So so I'm going to dive into some of the main trends now. And one of the main trends we're seeing is that youth today are just natural aggregators of information. From a very early age, they have been bombarded by visual inputs like screens flying in front of their face all the time. I mean, this generation literally grew up teething on their parents' phones. And in order to process this amount of data, their brains have physically rewired to make them see more stuff faster, to do that thing where memory is their short-term memory is able to hold all those screens at once and process all of that information faster. And so what that does is it actually makes them really great aggregators of information. They collect and organize and track collections of information totally naturally. It's just completely second nature. So they are texting themselves links. They are creating collections on Instagram or Pinterest. They're using read later on their iPhones. They're copying and pasting when they're doing homework snippets of text from websites into their notes app on their phone so that they can see what a whole bunch of things say at once about a topic. Let's say they're writing a paper for school or something like that. So it's all going into their notes app. They have insane screenshot galleries. Now, you thought your screenshot gallery was bad. Just take a look at a Gen Z screenshot gallery. They're also using bookmarks again. I mean, we haven't seen a generation systematically use bookmarks since boomers. And they make flashcards on Quizlet like you would not believe to organize their thoughts for school. So it's amazing how many different ways that they have found to create collections. And so I want to show you now a video of a young woman describing how she uses Pinterest.
My Nashville folder hasn't filled up quite yet, but I know I have another trip planned up for my 25th birthday. So what I've done is kind of created different boards based on locations to kind of see and add, the places, things to do. I also have one in the same folder, tropical destination outfits, where I would save the outfits that I like, and I would find those outfits by either searching, island, vacation outfits. That's like a perfect one. So I would kind of search there and look and say, what might be a good outfit or even a good swimsuit. I really like this, so I would definitely decide to save this
Look
in
how
my
many folders she
folder
has.
because it's perfect for the trip that I'm looking to plan. Here we go. So
Look at that. There are folders
just save that there.
within folders. Folders within folders. I mean, I didn't even know that was possible on Pinterest. I mean, if you want to feel old, just do research with Gen Z. So let me go on a little tangent for a second about Pinterest, because I know you're thinking, Pinterest, really? Is that still around? And the answer is yes. And in fact, during the pandemic, the Gen Z audience on Pinterest went crazy. It increased by over 50%. And in the spring of 2019, when everyone was quarantined, the number of pinners under 25 grew twice as fast as those 25 and older. What's really interesting, though, is how the audience demographics have shifted on Pinterest, where millennial women traditionally dominated Pinterest. But this year, the number of Gen Z males jumped to over 50%. And so some of the topics that are really popular for this male audience are home renos, cooking, things like that. What's different about Pinterest versus any other social platform, when you really think about it, is that it's used to plan for the future rather than post about what's going on in the past or what's currently going on. So it really falls in line with that mental model of Gen Z being planners for the future. Like, they're constantly planning for the future, especially as they graduate college, they're starting to work. They're just very much long-term planners. And so Pinterest works with their mental models. So let's move on to the next interesting trend you need to know about this generation. And this one actually goes along with the idea of being natural curators of information, is that, or natural aggregators of information, is that this generation is really specific and discerning when it comes to their collections. They're very specific content curators. They view their accounts as their personal brand, and they curate them with precision. And as a part of the grouping of data into categories, like we were just talking about, Gen Z they're opening multiple accounts for different sides of their personalities on Instagram and on other apps too. But what's interesting about that is that Instagram allows them to do that and actually enables them to do it and switch between them very easily. So we hear about these different accounts being called Finstas and Renstas, fake Instagrams and real Instagrams, but that's actually a misnomer. What's going on there is that these finstas, as they call them, they're actually just different slivers of their personality. So let's say a 15-year-old who's like into photography, and maybe she follows a specific band or a fan, maybe a YouTube personality or something like that. She's probably going to have 4 or 5 different Instagram accounts. And so she might have one that's just for her photography, and she's only going to, and it might be a business account because maybe she thinks she's going to be a photographer someday, but she'll follow and only people whose photography she likes and that fits her aesthetic, so that that's the only thing that's going to show up in her newsfeed. So she's curating the algorithm. She's working with the algorithm to have control over it. And then she'll also have maybe a fan account for the band she follows, or for the YouTuber she follows, or something like that. And then she'll have another account that's just her school account, like her pretty much general person account. And then she'll have what they call a second account, even though it might be their 4th or 5th account. And that's just for their close friends. And they call that their spam account. So it's for more real content, as they would say. And I've got a video of one Gen Zer describing these second accounts.
Like if you're a really close friend with a person, you're going to be added on their second or third account, and it's going to be a more realistic image of them. And that's why I love second accounts. I rarely post on them, but I do follow a bunch of people's second accounts, and they're always very much more funnier and less hardcore, I would say is the word for a main Instagram.
Yeah. The other thing that Gen Z is really clear on is where to post and look for content. And so I can run through all these key social media platforms for you and kind of run down exactly what they're used for, in terms of what Gen Z thinks about them. So Instagram is for random inspiration and kind of slice of life inspiration. Pinterest is for specific inspiration. So if you know that you want to have inspiration in cake decorating, you're going to go to Pinterest versus Instagram. Google is for discrete facts, especially for homework. So if you have a question and need an answer really quickly, you go to Google. You're not there for inspiration. YouTube is more for DIY, how-to learning videos, and they will watch YouTube again and again and again. This is a group, a generation that loves to learn. We've got TikTok, which is these bite-sized, information-dense chunks of content. And a lot happens with every TikTok, and there's this endless stream. And so it's funny because after hours on the dizzying TikTok, the other socials start to feel slow and less intense. And so that's sort of why TikTok has really taken off and become pretty addictive. It's because with TikTok, you've got these familiar sounds. You're connecting with them. They seem familiar. You've got these personalized videos though, and they represent yet another way to categorize and to navigate things. With Twitch, they're using that for live streaming, Discord for chatting while gaming, Snapchat has really taken off as the go-to place for chatting with friends. It's communicating with friends about random stuff. It's also for the behind the scenes look at the influencers and the brands that they follow. But it's really the app for communicating with friends. And they won't use text message unless it's something urgent. So where are you? I'm trying to meet up with you right now. Where are you? What'd you get for homework question number 3? Those kind of like more urgent things. Then they'd use text, but Snapchat is really the go-to for communication. And then Twitter and Facebook have kind of just dropped off. So Twitter is for like professional announcements, like when a YouTuber says they're gonna post some new things, maybe some news. And Facebook, it's sweet, really. It's for parents. Sometimes you see a Gen Zer using Facebook for Facebook groups because they're into an activity that older people are also into. So let's say there's a 16-year-old who's super into renovating old cars. He might join a Facebook group for that. So that would be an example of that. But for the most part, Twitter and Facebook have just tanked over the past few years. This is a chart where teens were asked to rank their favorite platforms. Now, it doesn't have everything that we covered on the previous slide, but I wanted to show it to you because I thought it was a really good breakdown that shows you the huge difference between like a Snapchat or TikTok and an Instagram, and then Twitter and Facebook down at the very bottom. And it's what's funny is that Facebook is really pretty unuseful to Gen Z. And for years, people said, oh, they're Gen Z, they're not on Facebook because their parents are on Facebook. But that makes no sense. Their parents are on Instagram too. Their parents are on TikTok. The reason that they don't like Facebook is that it makes them feel out of control. Setting up multiple Instagram accounts is a way to like have a workaround to aggregate information in a way that they can control. They are controlling the algorithms, not the other way around. The algorithms aren't controlling them and what they see. So they found a way to work with Instagram and not so on Facebook. Now, the next one here is really all about the attention span. And what's interesting here is that this is actually a video of a Gen Zer scrolling through Snapchat at just such a fast rate. What really is amazing to me, did you see that right there? They scrolled so fast that the images didn't even load and they just kept scrolling. They are processing information at just an amazing, alarming speeds. But once something piques their interest, once they are interested, those interests just quickly turn into obsessions, and they just deep dive into whatever it is for hours and days at a time. And I've got this great story of this girl that I was doing an interview with, and she was 13 and she lived in Florida, and she was scrolling through Instagram one day and she came across a picture of a hedgehog, a pet hedgehog. And she goes to her mother and she says, hey, Mom, can we get a pet hedgehog? And her mother says, absolutely not. Like, A, they're nocturnal creatures. And B, they're pokey. They're not going to be like cute and cuddly. And C, we have a dog. You want your hedgehog to become a chew toy? Like, this is not a good idea. Not going to happen. But this Gen Zer just was like, nope, it's gonna happen. So she persisted and just started deep diving into that. So she did nothing else in her free time for the next week other than look at hedgehogs on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram. Anywhere she could find them, she found hedgehogs. And what happened was she went back to her mother, but a week later, and she's like, hey, Mom, can we get a pet hedgehog? And her mom used the same excuses, like, no, no, no. And she had a response for every single one. And she kept asking and asking and asking. She finally wore her mother down. And finally her mother says, like, okay, well, how much is a pet hedgehog? And she says, okay, well, it's about $500 with the hedgehog and the cage and the food and everything else. And her mom says, great. If you can earn yourself $500, you can buy a pet hedgehog. Thinking that this was the end of it because this was a 13-year-old with no job. But then she went back to YouTube and she started searching up how to make money online. And she got into making slime. And it wasn't just any old slime. She was making luxury slime. So her mother had these essential oils laying around the house. And so she was putting essential oils into her slime. So it would be like lavender eucalyptus slime or orange spice slime and all these really special slimes. And she took these slimes down she packaged them beautifully and took them down to the convenience store that was across the street from her school. And she bugged the manager to stock them, to like put them on the counter. And of course he said no, but she kept going back every day. And again, just like her mother, she kept going back and she was persistent. And she kept asking if he would sell her slimes at the convenience store counter. And finally he said, fine, but if they don't sell, like, we're done, don't come back. And within a couple of weeks, she had made enough money to buy her pet hedgehog. And not only that, she realized that she loved making money. So she started selling her slime through Instagram. Now, she didn't even have a website, but she was selling her slime through Instagram. And then she bought her hedgehog, and her hedgehog is now paid and sponsored. So you can watch her hedgehog floating down the bathtub in an inner tube and all these cute little things on Instagram and YouTube because she now has her hedgehog. So this is just an example of the deep diving and persistence and business savvy and attention to money and all the things about Gen Z. I just love that story because it kind of consolidates so much that we've heard about Gen Z and what we're learning about Gen Z. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is how they get inspired and what inspiration means to Gen Z. So when I first started doing this study, I went to a professor at Georgetown that I know, marketing professor at Georgetown, who had studied millennials for a very long time. Also, he has 10 kids, so I guess it was kind of a ethnography at its best. And so I asked him, like, hey, if you had to boil it down to just a couple of things, just maybe just one thing that makes Gen Z different from millennials, what would it be? He goes, oh, that's easy. He said the question has shifted in their minds. So whereas we used to ask, and people who are older than say 25 would say, what do I want to know? And we go to Google and we search it up, and then we go down the rabbit hole finding out everything there is to know about it, right? So maybe we watch some videos, maybe we read some blog posts, maybe we read an article or something. So we say, what do we want to know? But Gen Z doesn't say that. Gen Z asks the questions, what should I want to know? So instead of what do I want to know, what should I want to know? So it's one word that's shifted in that question, but it's a big word because instead of creatively thinking, what do I want to know, and then searching for it, they are relying on the creators they follow, the algorithms that they have trained, all of the things that are on all the social medias to tell them what they should be interested in. It's kind of terrifying when you think about it. And that's why it's exactly why you see Gen Zs bored scrolling on their phones. Just have you seen that? Just scrolling for hours and hours and hours at the time because they are waiting for inspiration to strike. Because when it does, when they get interested in it, it is such a surge of excitement. It's such a good feeling. It's worth it. It's worth scrolling for hours and hours and hours at a time, waiting for inspiration. The other thing that we found in terms of inspiration is that learning is really inspiring to them. And we did this study where we had Gen Z watch 3 hours of Netflix, and then we talked to them and we interviewed them and said, oh, so how do you feel right now? And we got these responses that said things like, I feel kind of guilty, like I wasted my time, like I could have been doing something better with my time. And then we had a whole set who we asked to watch YouTube for 3 hours. So, like an average Tuesday, we would have them watch YouTube for 3 hours. And then we asked them like, oh, how do you feel now? And they were like, I feel great. So it was exactly the opposite of the ones who were watching Netflix. They're like, I feel great. I feel like I learned something. I feel like I did something. Do you see my makeup? I tried my makeup differently. Or, oh, I finally got past that level of a game. And it didn't matter what they were learning. It wasn't necessarily anything academic that they were learning, but they felt like they were learning skills of some kind. So they were learning how to do their makeup. They were learning how to beat a level at a video game. They were watching those kind of things, and then they were doing them. So there really are, Gen Z really is this generation of doers. They don't just watch. It's not like a millennial generation that will sit down and watch a cooking show and then plan a meal and go to the grocery store and make a meal. They would never watch a cooking show. They would watch a YouTube video and they'd be pausing it, getting the ingredients, playing it. Okay, cooking one thing, pausing it, playing it, pausing it, playing it. There's less planning that goes into it. So they're usually out of an ingredient or two, but it's very interactive. It's more and a more interactive experience.
YouTube shows me, well, what I want to know because
What I want to know.
my recommended feed definitely contains stuff that I've been viewing. I love using YouTube for that fact, and well, here are a few creators that I love. First is Node. I love their channel because their gaming videos are all pretty funny, and they got me hooked on virtual reality. I absolutely love VR simply because of this channel. They're a spin-off channel of another channel called Corridor, which I love. They do VFX videos, and their videos are all very entertaining, and I absolutely love every single one.
Everyone.
Another channel that I love is called Cosmonaut Variety Hour. He does movie reviews, and they're all pretty funny, but they're all interesting to watch as well. I've watched many of his reviews, and he also does TV reviews. Lastly, well, my favorite YouTuber is Pewdiepie. Now, his content is pretty hilarious, as well as the fact that he has basically a news channel on his channel. It's very interesting to watch. He does some videos on Dr. Phil too, which is always really funny. So yeah, he's probably my favorite content creator. I watch his videos almost daily, and I absolutely love every single one.
I just want to emphasize at the beginning, did you hear him say, YouTube shows me what I want to know? It suggests it to him. So it's not what do I want to know, it's what should I know? And he talks about the creators. He talks about everything that has influenced him to get interested in topics. And that is not a one-off. That is, when you do interviews with Gen Z, it's over and over and over. They're talking about how they find information, how they became interested in topics. It's usually from someone they follow. It's from an influencer. It's from an algorithm. It's from news feeds showing up. It's from related items on YouTube, from the autoplay that's going on. That's how they're getting interested in topics. Now, we talked about Generation Z as a generation of doers, but I want to emphasize something that we saw a lot of this year, especially hit the news. And that is a generation of doers in terms of social justice. And now this is one of the most diverse generations ever seen in the US in every sense of that word, in terms of race, sexual identity, family composition at home, all the things. And because this generation has been raised to accept and celebrate differences, they don't have the same type of bias implicitly in their heads. And so they see the world with more psychological agency, and they can't comprehend why misjustice is happening. And it's for this reason that they may feel social justice more strongly than other generations, and that's why they're taking action. And you really saw it come to a head this year, but it's been going on for a long time. It was just that the news coverage really had it happening this year, really honed in on it. Okay, now the next one, move over reality TV loving millennials. Gen Z ain't got time for that drama. Instead, they want to peer into the lives of the real people they follow. They see authenticity as a flow of content, photos of their day, snippets of another person's world. Authenticity is familiarity, and it is consistency. This is one of the reasons that they follow YouTube and IG celebs over Hollywood or music celebs any day. It's the big time celebrities who are most successful with, and even the big time celebrities who are most successful with Gen Z, they are successful because they have made themselves relatable in some way. So if a participant loves Cardi B, they might tell you, oh, well, I love Cardi B because everything she wears, I could go and buy it on fashionnova.com. So it makes her seem within reach. It makes her seem accessible. So there's a couple of things going on in terms of what authenticity is. It's familiarity, it's consistency, and it's also that feeling that something is within reach. It's the week in my life that they're watching on YouTube. I'm going to play this video for you, and it's going to, one of the girls going to say, oh, she is from my town, and she goes to lunch at a place that I went to lunch. It's within reach.
I definitely follow a lot of YouTubers' lives. I'm kind of obsessed with YouTube and watching Week in My Lives by YouTube celebrities. And I guess I would call them celebrities because they have so many people on their YouTube. And then mainly the people I follow on YouTube are Instagram celebrities. So it's all the YouTubers that I follow on Instagram. So first I'm just going to show you who I follow on Instagram. One big girl is Danielle Carolyn. So this is her. She actually lived in Tampa where I live. And so that's really, really cool to look at. And she, like, I could see where she's going, like, places that she goes to lunch when she's home from college are places I go to. And that's just really, really cool to me. I know the school that she goes to. So that's why I love watching her, because she seems very authentic to me and very real and very, like,
Yeah. So as we come to the close in this talk, we have covered a number of different types of themes and trends about this generation and how they think and act and behave differently than other generations of the past. And what's interesting here too is that what they're doing, what this generation is doing, is really having this ripple effect across every other generation. So their parents are doing things differently because they do things differently. Their grandparents are doing things differently because they do things differently. Even family decision making has become much more democratized, where Gen Z is involved in family decisions. For example, think about when you were a kid and your mom made dinner. Well, did your mom ask you, what do you want for dinner? No, she probably just made dinner and put it on the table and you ate it, right? But with this generation, the mom's like, oh, what do you want for dinner tonight? And there's a discussion about it. It's like, oh, where do you want to go to takeout? Oh, you don't want that. Let's go somewhere else then. There's this more democratized discussions that are going on in family households. So that's pretty interesting too. The family dynamics have certainly shifted as well. So let me close this talk by asking you this. Are you unknowingly putting yourself out of business? And that's a tough question to ask ourselves. And I'm sure that many of us here are implementing programs and using communications and marketing tactics that have worked in the past for millennials. And because they've worked in the past, we try them again, but they're not working anymore. So by continuing this cycle, are you becoming a prisoner to a set of irrelevant tactics? These are all things that I think about when I'm doing research for a company, and they show me what they're doing and how their marketing is going and what their communications are like and how they're engaging people. Gen Z is your present. Gen Z is your future, whether you like it or not. And now that you know some of the key trends to reaching this group, you have the ability to look at what your current activities are, how you currently reach this audience, how you engage this audience, how you pull them in, and realistically think about whether you have a roadmap that's going to work and that's going to get you the results that you're looking for. So thank you so much for being here today. Being so excited and curious about today's youth. If you would like that free chapter of my book, just pull out your phone and text this number 66866 with the word hi, HI, hi to you too. And I know that you all have the ability to build services and programs that serve this generation and make a real impact in their lives. And that's why you're here today. And I just hope that you are so proud of yourselves for coming here today, on the verge of this long weekend, and being here today, learning about this incredible generation that is really shaking the world, rocking the world, and changing how all organizations are doing things. So thank you so much for being here.